Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, they were the unacceptable face of capitalism, getting rich while leaving BHS on life support. MPs have delivered a damning verdict on Sir Philip Green and others who ran the high street business into the ground, leaving thousands of people without jobs and the pension fund with a big black hole. A spokesman for the Prime Minister, Theresa May, said she was determined to do more to tackle irresponsible, reckless corporate behaviour. And there are renewed calls for Sir Philip to be stripped of his knighthood, as our business correspondent Helia Abrahimi reports.
49 witnesses, 146 documents filed, and 30 hours of painstaking testimony.
I'm not a liar.
The result, a damning report into the collapse of BHS. At its heart, an unedifying portrayal of business in Britain, with the man once described as the king of the high street, seen instead as the unacceptable face of capitalism. The report alleges the Green family were too quick to think of their own wealth, taking out £423 million in dividends, while little was spent on investing in the company. And while MPs concede Sir Philip had heartfelt affection for BHS, they also warned the fallout could bring him down. The report opens with a quote from the new Prime Minister, Theresa May.
The fourth way in which I want to make our economy work for everyone is by getting tough on irresponsible behaviour in big business. Because yes, we're the Conservative Party. Yes, we're the party of enterprise. But that does not mean we should be prepared to accept that anything goes.
And it's not just Sir Philip Green in the firing line. There's a whole catalogue of the great and the good of the city. Goldman Sachs, whose offices are right here, spent years trying to throw off its infamous moniker, the Great Vampire Squid. But MPs blamed the bank for lending a lustre of credibility to a doomed rescue bid from Dominic Chappelle. And it's not just Goldman Sachs' reputation that's been tarnished. PwC, Deloitte, Grant Thornton and legal firm Olswang provided legitimacy to people who would otherwise be bereft of credibility. Like Dominic Chappelle, described as incompetent, self-serving and effectively having his hands in the till. And Lord Grabbanner didn't escape rebuke either. The Labour peer was criticised for his docile approach to chairmanship, taking £125,000 a year, but failing to take part in the sales process of the company he chaired. The system, the report made clear, had failed to provide a check and balance. But ultimately, MPs said it was Sir Philip who was primarily to blame.
We want entrepreneurs, we want business successes, but we don't want them at any price. Sir Philip Green plundered these companies and took huge sums of money out of this group, out of Arcadia, and the money was siphoned up to Lady Green. I think instead of Sir Philip Green telling us what a warm heart he's got, I think we ought to see how generous his chequebook is in making good, first of all, the pension deficit.
How much is that going to cost?
Region of 700 million. I think he cares passionately about his knighthood. I think his wife cares even more about being called Lady Green, and they better pay up quickly if they want any chance of maintaining that social position.
Far away from Westminster, Sir Philip's £100 million yacht, Lionheart, is touring the Mediterranean. From the Greek island of Skepalos, he told this channel he feels beaten up back in Britain, and he insisted his rescue project for the pension scheme was still afloat, though he wouldn't put a figure on how much he was willing to pay. The retailer has always maintained he's invested heavily in BHS. What's become clear is that big debate that engulfed London City about ethical capitalism hasn't actually penetrated all areas of British industry. Sectors like retail are yet to make that cultural shift. For Mrs May's vision of a fairer Britain that serves the whole of society rather than the few, a lot will have to change. But for BHS's 11,000 workers and 22,000 pensioners, that change may not come soon enough.
Well, with me now is the former Pensions Minister, Ros Altman, and Oliver Parry from the Institute of Directors. Baroness Altman first, are you confident that the pensions regulator will force Sir Philip Green to pay some of the money, I mean, how much, who knows, maybe £571 million, which is what it would require to make this BHS pension scheme safe? Are you confident the regulator will do it, or are they toothless?
The regulator definitely has the power to force an employer who hasn't properly supported the pension scheme to put in huge sums of money if that's what's required. I do hope that Sir Philip will himself decide to take the responsibility for the pension scheme. He said he wants to. I hope
he's
he means
offered £80 million.
That's nowhere near enough. That's nowhere near enough.
What is enough?
We don't know because we haven't got the latest figures, but I would imagine you're talking a few hundred million.
£571 million to make the scheme safe. Do you think he should pay up every penny of that?
Well, there are different ways in which you can deal with a pension scheme. If he takes back responsibility and underwrites it, he won't necessarily have to put that money in immediately. That's the cost last year of buying annuities for all the liabilities. The cost will have gone up by now. I mean, Frank Field was saying about 700 million. We don't know exactly. It's clear this is a huge sum of money. But let's face it, you know, Sir Philip was in charge and promised these loyal workers pensions. He promised to sort it, and I assume that he will.
Well, when you see Sir Philip cruising around the Mediterranean in a £100 million yacht, does it stick in your craw?
Well, look, I think really what we're talking about is poor corporate governance. The whole system at Arcadia and BHS completely broke down.
But is he the unacceptable face of capitalism?
He's certainly not helping himself at the moment. I mean, clearly...
That's an understatement.
Well, I mean, really, I truly believe that actually he probably does want to put it right, and I'd like to think that he would take actions without some form of incentivisation and actually come back and deal with it now.
But he's got to hurry up, hasn't he? I mean,
well, absolutely. I mean, if it was me, I'd be on the first plane back. But I mean, what Sir Philip needs to do is actually come back and address these concerns straight on, and that's absolutely crucial.
Given that there are nearly, I think, 5,000 final salary pension schemes that are in deficit, BHS is unlikely to be the last company that gets hurriedly sold without the pensions obligations being met. Well, is the law up to it?
Actually, the law itself would have allowed Sir Philip to deal with the pension scheme before he sold the company. And I'm amazed that he and his advisors didn't ask for clearance from the pensions regulator. We have an established system whereby he would have gone to the pensions regulator, negotiated with them an amount of money that he needed to put into the scheme, and then the regulator would have been able to approve the sale and he would have no more responsibility. He chose not to do that. The regulator is now going to, already looking at that and demanding the information they would have asked for anyway if they were going to get clearance. And I would hope that other employers seeing this would recognise that it's really important to get that clearance before they sell a business with a pension deficit. And if they give the information, they can do it very quickly.
Well, given that years and years ago, it was the Guinness and Maxwell scandals, more recently, obviously, the financial crisis, you know, Philip Green himself has been advised by some blue-chip firms and banks.
Yep.
Is there such a thing as responsible capitalism, or is that actually a contradiction in terms?
Well, I think there is, but I mean, you know, in the context of what we saw with Mike Ashley and Sports Direct on Friday, clearly it's not helping the reputation of British business as a whole. But I mean, I think really, as Baroness Altman has identified, it was a complete breakdown in the regulatory system, and we need to look closely at that.
Well, we've just actually had a statement from Sir Philip Green right now saying that he's trying to find a solution for the BHS pension fund, and he said he's sad and sorry for all the BHS people caught up in this horrid story. Does that go anywhere near and far enough to address your worries?
Well, what we have to see is a proper plan of how he is going to deal with the pension scheme, take responsibility for it, and deliver the pensions that he promised to the members. He can do that, and I think he is working on ways to do it. He promised the select committees that he was actually going to fix it, and his workers really do deserve that.
If he doesn't, though, if he drags his heels, given that you've just come out of government, you said that your experience in government was terrible and it actually affected your health. Do you trust your colleagues who are still in government to hold his feet to the fire on this?
I do believe that the pensions regulator will hold his feet to the fire.
Not ministers, though.
Well, it is actually Parliament decided it's the pensions regulator that is responsible for dealing with these situations. If the regulator doesn't have the power, then Parliament and ministers will step in. But the regulator does have strong powers to force an employer who isn't living up to their pension responsibilities to do so. And if Sir Philip doesn't do this voluntarily, the regulator will, I believe, force him to do it.
Baroness Altman, Oliver Parry, thank you very much for joining us.
I've been